My name is Michelle Balget. I'm currently a student at Brock University in the sociology program, and I am living with depression and social anxiety. Is it normal to have suicidal thoughts during PMS? I asked this question on an online forum many years ago, sure that those on the other end would laugh at the absurdity of my question. Of course it's normal, I thought. I've heard girls in the change room at school saying how their period makes them want to kill themselves, so why am I the only one that can't deal with it? Little did I know that they were just talking about hating cramps. A flood of answers to my question appeared on the screen, ranging from no, that's not normal, to please call a suicide helpline right away. I immediately started crying, realizing that the way I had felt for almost every month for years was not normal. That was the first time I had ever reached out to or told anyone about my periods, for lack of a better word, of severe depression. Since my early teens, I was having suicidal thoughts and crying spells almost every month. It was about 2 or 3 years later that I asked the question online that changed the way I thought about myself. When I entered grade 12, something was different. I was depressed and having suicidal thoughts almost every day. I would hide it from my family and friends by telling them I was just tired. I would walk through the school halls as if I weren't really there. I would go straight to my room when I got home to listen to depressive music and lay in the dark, crying for hours on end. Other times, I would spend hours in the dark staring at the wall. My speech was slowed down, my interests were inexistent. I was always tired, I isolated myself. I felt worthless, guilty, and the light in my eyes had faded long ago. Every night I hoped that I wouldn't wake up in the morning, but every morning was a disappointment because I did wake up. There was a time when I had decided to end it all as I collapsed on the bathroom floor, but there was at least some sense left in me that said to wait until the next day. I was still depressed that next day, but not depressed enough to go through with it. I would later find out that I have seasonal affective disorder, where I become depressed in the fall and winter months. I went to the doctor after a few months of feeling this way, and he suggested that I eat healthier, exercise regularly, and read a book about cognitive behavioral therapy, which would hopefully change my thinking from negative to positive. I tried this for a couple months, but it wasn't helping. I started medication and I finally began to feel better. I'm glad my doctor suggested methods other than medication to help me first, but I don't think anyone, even myself, realized just how bad I was. Most of the times I became depressed again, it kind of snuck up on me, but I would eventually tell my doctor and get the medicine bumped up. In first year university, I had seriously considered killing myself and had a plan. I promised a friend that I would text her before I did anything though, and so I had to follow through with that promise. I believe it was that text and talking to her that saved my life. Knowing my family and friends love me was always what got me through. Even in the worst times when my mind was so distorted that I believed they didn't love me, there was still that what if in the back of my mind. I couldn't do that to them. I spent the following years being depressed on and off, mostly during the fall and winter months. I definitely think it's the lack of sunlight in those months that makes me depressed. Surely living in a basement apartment during school didn't help either. I even kept the blinds closed because I preferred to be in the dark. In the late spring and summer months, I was happy most days, almost every day in fact, but would have times when I would be depressed and even have to miss work once or twice. I have always been shy, but in my 4th year of university, I realized it was more than shyness. I couldn't even attend my classes or seminars because I was too afraid of being around other people I didn't know well. It felt like everyone was staring at me and judging me. That was when I was diagnosed with another mental illness, social anxiety disorder. That year I skipped almost all my classes, didn't hand anything in, and quit school at the last minute, losing a lot of money. I took the next year off. During that year back at home, I saw a therapist, and she suggested group therapy for social anxiety. That thought terrified me, but about 6 months later I found myself a part of a group therapy program with CAMH. CAMH stands for the Center for Addictions and Mental Health, and it's in Toronto. We did exposures, exposing ourselves gradually to uncomfortable situations during those classes and outside of them. A memorable one for me was when I got in front of everyone while being recorded, singing and dancing to Nelly's Hot in Here while stripping myself of an appropriate amount of clothing. I had many layers on. I was proud of myself, and some of the others said that they wouldn't have been able to do what I did. It meant a lot to me because I wouldn't have been able to do that before either, and they were all very supportive. Alas, by the end of the program, I happened to get depressed again. When my family got it out of me that I was having suicidal thoughts again, even though I considered them mild, They took me to the hospital, and I was then referred to a different therapist and psychiatrist. My medicine was also changed again. This time though, something felt different. I felt really happy. And I was so happy that I decided last minute to go back to university. Later that week, I found a house and signed the lease to live with 5 other girls I didn't even know. Everything was going well, but I was scared my depression would come back once school started. My therapist and I created a chart of triggers, interventions, and people to call. It was created for this school year, starting last fall, but I haven't had to use it. I was happy during the fall, and I'm still happy this winter for the first time in 6 years. When my suicidal thoughts began during PMS, that was almost 10 years ago. One of the most important things that has changed is my thought process. I used to look in the mirror every day and tell myself that I looked disgusting and others shouldn't have to look at me. Now I can look in the mirror and say, hey, you're kind of pretty. I do my best not to call myself stupid, and I look at different situations and problems with optimism. My group therapy at CAMH helped a lot with this because we wrote down in charts the situation we were in, what our thoughts were, and how we reacted and felt. Seeing my thoughts written down really showed me how distorted my thinking was. My marks are what I always hoped they would be in university, and I attend most of my classes. This summer, I will have a job, or at least volunteer work, neither of which I had done in years because of my mental health. I know that there is a bright future ahead of me. If you're struggling with any kind of mental illness, don't be afraid to speak out and tell someone or ask for help. I know there can be a bright future for you too.